Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be continuing the series on the Alpaca Market Data API. In the first two videos, I showed you how to stream data over WebSockets in real time using the Alpaca Market Data API and WebSockets. In the second video, I showed you how to use the Alpaca Market Data REST API to download bar data over multiple timeframes, including the 5-minute and the daily bars for all of the holdings in the QQQ, which is the NASDAQ 100. So in this video, I want to actually take that data from the NASDAQ 100 that we downloaded, and for all of those bars, I'm going to try using a technical analysis library in order to calculate some indicators and see if we can use this new library called bta-lib, which is made by the author of Backtrader. So he's actually created his own technical analysis library, and it has a whole variety of indicators. So if you click on the documentation here, there's very good documentation here if you want to learn how to use it, but if you want to follow along with this video, I'm going to show you a little bit of how to use this. So there's a variety of indicators available. So he shows you how to apply indicators to a CSV file in a certain format, and it gives a lot of documentation on the input and output. And there's a whole list of all of the indicators that are provided by this library. So if you scroll down, this is an alphabetical listing. So you can see there's indicators in here for ATR, Bollinger Bands, crossing up and down, a lot of the different indicators you'll see, and then you'll see like things like the RSI, or rate of change, and standard deviation, and what else do we have here? MACD, moving averages, and so forth. So tons of common indicators are in this Python package here. So I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to install it and see if I can apply this bta-lib library to the data that we've downloaded from the Alpaca Market Data API. So let's go ahead and get started there. So I'm going to go back to my Visual Studio Code editor and where we left off in the last video. So you'll remember that we were able to make a HTTP requests to the Alpaca Market Data API, and for each symbol we downloaded these daily bars. So we have this big list of all of the symbols and for the holdings in the QQQ, and then we have a big JSON object here which has a symbol and then the open, high, low, close, and volume for a particular daily timestamp. And so now that we have this data, we should be able to perform common calculations on it. So let's say if we want to calculate the 200-day moving average or the RSI, which are common things that people do, we can apply that to this series of bars. So let's see how we can use the Backtrader bta-lib in order to do that. So let's go to the documentation here, and let's try out bta-lib first of all with let's see what their hello world example is here. So the author has these documents here, and the first thing you need to do obviously is install the library. So it's bta-lib like this, and we always use pip here, right? So we're going to do pip3 install bta-lib. I'm going to install that, and this installs all of the dependencies we need. So you'll see that it installs bta-lib, and it looks like it depends on pandas, the state util, numpy, so a couple other dependencies, but all that's taken care of now that we installed it with the Python package manager. So that's installed, and then now we need to, let's just do the quick start, and then we'll follow this quick start and figure out how this thing works, and then we'll figure out how to get our data that we download from Alpaca in a format that works with bta-lib. So we'll copy this guy, little hello world snippet, or you can click that button, and let's just run it as is. So I'm going to make a new file called ta.py and put that in there, and it's looking for a file here. So let me run this first and see what it says. Right, it says the file 2006 day 001 does not exist, right? So it doesn't exist. So, but in the GitHub repository for this particular library, if you click it, you can get a copy of this text file. And so we're going to use this example and then get our data in a format that matches this example. So I'm going to click on data here, and here's the data file. And I'm just going to click the raw data, and then we'll just save this data as is. So under data here, let's do a new file and call it ta.text, and I'm going to paste this stuff in here. So it looks like just like Backtrader has, we have a date, a CSV file with the format of date, open, high, low, close, volume, and open interest. And if you'll remember from the Alpaca Market Data API, we have a date timestamp, we have open, high, low, and close data. It's just in a JSON format. So we're just going to need to transform that data into this format to make it work. All right, so we're in here in the example, and so since I put it in data ta.text, I'm going to do data/ta.text, and then this looks like it just applies one indicator. So we import bta-lib, which is the name of the package, and we import pandas, which is used for data frames that we're processing. And it looks like we read a CSV file into a pandas data frame. df is data frame. And then it looks like you can just apply this technical analysis library. You can apply one of the indicators to that data frame, and then it returns a result. And so it looks like he's calculating the simple moving average. So let's go ahead and print that simple moving average. And first of all, let's print the data frame itself, right? And then see what that looks like. So we're going to read the data from here into a CSV and print the data frame. So I'm going to run this, make sure it reads it. And you can see just like that, very easy. It read the CSV file into a pandas data frame. And you see this kind of looks like a nice frame or a table where we had the dates, open, high, low, close, volume, and open interest. And what's nice about these pandas data frames is we can easily apply calculations to all of the numbers in this data frame, or we can add additional columns to the data frame that are calculations that we run on these particular values here. So it's just a series of open, high, low, close values and volume, and a date associated with them. So to get the simple moving average, we simply do SMA equals, and then we use one of the indicators in the library, btalib.sma, and then we apply that to the data frame. And so now if we print the simple moving average, right, we get this object, which is a simple, it looks like it's an indicator object. So we don't see the data, but what you want to do is do .df. And so if you print the data frame associated with that object, then you'll actually get the simple moving average. So it looks like you can see the moving average across each day. So for December 29th, the moving average was 2031.73. And so you notice we just did SMA, but which SMA, right? Is it the 200-day, 50-day, 10-day, what? So if you look in the documentation here, it gives us a default. And so if I search, yeah, so the default is actually 30 days, but we can probably change the setting here. So we can do the period. And so like if we want to do the 4-day moving average, for instance, right, we can do period equals 4, or let's do 5. Now let's print it again. And then now it looks like the number is 2057. And let's just look at our data set and just make sure that number makes sense, that we're using this right. So let's look at the last 5 days in here. And you'll see we have 2071, 2059. And so one thing I've learned is which one of these series is it using? It's going to look for the close by default. So that'll be the first, second, third, fourth, right, number after the date. And so it's actually calculating the average of the closing values. And so if we look down at the bottom, we should be able to find the last 5 here. So 2052, 23, 36. Actually, it's this one. So date 1, 2, 3, 4. And so these 5 numbers, if you add those up and divide it by 5, you should get 2057, just like that. And the same with the previous 5 from December 28th. So very easy, simple moving average, right? Just average the numbers. You can do that. You don't really need a special library. You can just use regular Python for that. But you might not know the formula for all of these other indicators that are built in, but it makes a good example because you can usually check to make sure you're using it correctly, right? So it looks like we know how to use this library. So now all we need, instead of this data set, let's get our actual price data from Alpaca into this format and then run this technical analysis library against that data set to calculate some various indicator values and so forth. So I have my ta.py here. And then in the last video, we downloaded the QQQ data, right? And we output it as JSON. And so now what we want to do is transform that data from this format here, right? And we're going to transform it into a format that looks more like this flat list here. So let me go ahead and do that. So let's go back to this bars.py that's in the repository. And what we'll do here, we still need to read the holdings from this QQQ CSV, right? and then we'll have the list of symbols that we passed to Alpaca. That looks good. We don't need to print the symbols, so we don't want to print that. And we'll just do the day bars, and I'll leave that commented out in the repo in case anyone wants to use the 5-minute bars. So we need to request it like that still, and we're going to dump the data again, so let's just make sure this still works. So bars.py, run that, and then we should get a big dump of data from Alpaca now. Right, so there it's coming out. And then you see, if you remember, we have a key and value. So we'll have a key with the stock symbol, and then a value, which is a list of all of the bars. And so what we can do is just loop through all those. So let's do for a symbol in, and let's see, I'm going to call this data, and I'm going to do data equals r.json. And so that'll give us the data in a nice dictionary. And let's just do this for a couple of symbols first, just to make sure this works. So I'm going to set symbols. Instead of this list of 100, I'm just going to do 2 of them for now. So let's do Apple and Microsoft again, just to make sure it works first before we pull like 100 symbols. So Apple and Microsoft, we'll pull those. And then we're going to get the data in a dictionary here. And then the dictionary has keys. So for symbol in data, we can print symbol, or we can print data symbol, right? And so if I do that, that'll actually print the list. Oops, we don't want that as a string. So this symbol is going to be Apple, then Microsoft, and then we'll get a list for each of one. And so now what we're going to try to do is write this data to a file for each symbol instead of printing it to the screen, right? So how do we write a file? So for each symbol, well, let's go ahead and create a file for each symbol. So what I'll do is create a new directory, and I'll call it under data, I'll make a new folder called OHLC, so our open, high, low, close data. And let's just write a file for each stock symbol into this OHLC directory. And so to write a file in Python, we can just do file. So for each symbol, let's create a new file. So I'll do f equals open, and then what's the name of the file? We want to do, we'll call it like apple.txt or microsoft.txt and so forth. So let's create a variable for the file name, right? And then we'll do a string format, and then we'll put the symbol there, .text, and then we'll put the directory name in here, data OHLC, and then for each symbol, we'll just substitute that symbol in. And so this will become, apple.txt and write it to that directory, right? So that'll be the file name. So we open the file name and reopen it for writing, just like that. And then this will create a new file that we can write to. And then all we got to do is f.write. We can write the data for that symbol. And so let's see if this writes a file containing just the bar data for that one symbol. So I'm going to run this again. Right, and it must be a string, not a list. And so I am going to, let's just dump this. So we'll do f.write, and we'll do json.dumps just to convert it to a string. Okay. And in here, you'll see now we have an apple.txt and microsoft.txt, which is great. So we have our data sets split out, and they're in this JSON string format, which is good for now, but we're going to transform that and make it look more like that. So what we'll do is loop through, since this is a list of data points, let's just loop through them all and write them line by line to our file. And so what I'm going to do is do a string format. So for each one of these files, we're going to open and create a new file, and then we'll write this exact format. So we'll write the headers first. So I'll copy that, and then I'll write those headers. And then instead of json.dumps here, let's go ahead and loop through all the data points. So for bar in data symbol, so we're going to loop through that list. And then for each bar, we're going to write that data as one line in the file. So I'll do f.write, and then I'll do, what do we need? Bar t, right? So we'll write, let's format the line. So we'll do line equals, and this is just going to be a comma separated list, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns. And so let's put some placeholders like that, and then we'll format it and tell what we need to put in the placeholders. All right, so what do we want? We want our timestamp, which is bar T, and then open, high, low, close, OHLC V, right? So we'll do, and then so we'll have bar O, bar H, bar L, and then bar C, and then bar volume. And then we'll just put 0 for the last number, which is that open interest column, and then we'll write the line to the file. Yeah, so let's try that. V is not defined. I didn't do a string. All right, so we did that. And look at that. So now we have date, open, high, low, close, volume, and open interest written to the file. And then we have this big blob of data. So there's no carriage returns. It looks like it's just one long line. So let's go ahead and put some carriage returns in here. And so after the headings, we need a new line, which is you do \n to do that. And then after this line, we'll put \n. Now I'll run it like that. And now if we do that, you'll see we have our headers and then a timestamp, open, high, low, and close. All right, so next step. So these are actually Unix timestamps. I'm not sure how bta-lib works with those, so there's probably a way to tell it it's a Unix timestamp. But just for now, instead of using a timestamp, I'm just going to format it in this format here, which is year, month, day. So let's take these timestamps and write them as year, month, day instead. So I'm going to do t equals, and let me get my notes. We need the date time library, so I'll do from date time, import date time. And then we can do t equals date time dot from timestamp, and that accepts a Unix timestamp like that. So I'll get bar t, and then we'll get this object like this, and then I can say day equals t dot string from time, and I can tell it the format. So I do %, capital Y, %m, and %d. And if you want a different format, you can check the Python documentation, but you can format these Unix timestamps in any way you want. If you want like the month written out as January, like in long form or whatever, but they want the format as year, month, day, and 2 digits for the month and day. So this is the string formatter for that, and that'll give us the day. So instead of bar t, I'm just going to do day, and I'm going to write that out to the files. In our new file, now we have January 13th, 2016, open, high, low, close, and volume, which is great. And we have that for Apple, and now we have it for Microsoft. And then now that we're happy with that, instead of hard coding these two symbols, let's get it back to just using the entire holdings, and let's see if we can write 100 text files and have open, high, low, close data in a nice format for technical analysis, all written in this one OHLC file. So I'm going to run this and have it fetch all those. And this will take a little bit longer, but probably not that long. All right, so that is running for each symbol, and let's see if this is refreshed. There you go. So OHLC, and now we have a text file for every symbol in the QQQ. So if I want to check on like PayPal, there you go. If I want to check on Lululemon, there you go. So we have tons of data sets now, and then we also have bta-lib, the Backtrader bta-lib, that has a way to read a file in that exact format and apply technical analysis to it. So now let's just take this ta.py, and instead of doing data/ta.text, let's point it at one of these OHLC data. So I'm going to do OHLC, and then I'm going to apply it to Apple. So our apple.text, and let's get the simple moving average there. So I'm going to run Python 3, and then I'll run ta.py. And you see we have a 5-day moving average of Apple stock, which is at 361. And then it looks like back in 2016, the 5-day moving average was 99.436. And if you look at the very beginning, they have not a number, and that's because that's the first date in the series. So you can't do the average of the 5 days before, right, unless there's 5 data points. So the first 4 data points are going to say not a number, and then the fifth one is the average of the previous 5. So that's great. So we can apply Backtrader's technical analysis library to Alpaca market data dataset. Okay, so just to go a little bit further, let's slice and dice this a little bit and try a couple more indicators to see if we can do anything there. So let's print out, let's actually get the original data frame and just append the SMA as another column. So what I'm going to do is say df SMA equals SMA .df like that. And now if I print the entire data frame and run that, you'll see now we have a data frame that not only has the Apple open, high, low, and close inside of the data frame, right? Also at the very end, we have the simple moving average right there, right? So that is great. So now we can just keep appending technical indicators here. So let's, for simplicity, let's just do RSI. So if we want to do RSI, right, we can do RSI equals bta-lib.rsi. And then we'll just use the default settings. We'll run that. And then we'll say df RSI equals the RSI data frame. And yeah, let's run that. And there you go. So we have the RSI, and you see Apple isn't quite overbought yet, but it's approaching it. So the default settings on most RSI, the RSI indicator, typically 70, above 70 is overbought, and below 30 is oversold. And so if we want to find, let's say we want to find the days when Apple stock was oversold, let's try to filter down this data frame to days where the RSI here was below 30, and let's just make sure this bta-lib works. So what I'll do here is say oversold days equals df, and then in brackets I'll do df RSI is less than, and so the syntax is a little tricky. I don't use pandas like all the time, so I don't have a great explanation for this yet, but what you want to do here is reference the data frame, and then you can slice it up by saying filter. You can filter it down by saying, give me the rows where the RSI matches this expression. So df RSI is less than 30, and that'll be the oversold days. So I'll print oversold days like that. And then let's see what that gives us, right? And so this will give us a subset of the days. So it looks like only a few, let's see, one, like a couple dozen rows in here. And so let's look, let's see, was Apple really oversold these days? So you see our RSI column here, all these numbers are below 30, which is good. That's what we wanted. And we're saying that means oversold. And so let's look on some particular days, like for instance, when do we know Apple was oversold? So let's think about what happened in the market in the last several years. When was Apple oversold? That would have been at the end of 2018. There was a huge sell-off in the beginning of 2019 when they had that, they did a negative earnings pre-announcement, and so Apple went down to like 142. I remember making a buy around that point, actually. So that was the time it was oversold. And so if you look, that's indeed the case. There was that big sell-off into New Year's Eve. And there's also a sell-off after that earnings report, or that earnings pre-announcement. So that looks like it says January 2nd there. It was oversold. And so, yeah, if we look at, and let's just confirm some of this with like a site like TradingView that has these indicators built in. And so if I type Apple in there, right, we can see a full feature chart. And if we go back, and I have the RSI here printed, and I'm on the daily time frame. And if you look in, let's see, January, right, of 2019, this is where Apple, sold off really huge. And if you look over here on January 2nd, January 3rd, it looks like, yeah, so Apple was oversold a couple times. So this was on Christmas Eve, and then also January 3rd. And it looks like I have an off by one issue here. So I'll check. We might want to check on the timestamp. So I think this actually should be the 24th and the 3rd. So it might be something with the way we're formatting the timestamp here. But you'll see that it was indeed oversold that day. And so I think I need to convert the timestamp. But yeah, so we're oversold here where the, oversold here near Christmas Eve, and oversold here on January 3rd here. And you see this, I have the RSI here written out, and then so you see this is the oversold line at 30, And so this is where we were oversold at the end of December, and then this is the oversold point at the beginning of January. So looks like this is correctly, bta-lib is correctly calculating oversold points, and we can also see in February 26th, 27th area. So if we scroll to the present, you'll remember that's when the coronavirus scares first started happening, and February 26th, 27th, you can see this first oversold signal here, where the RSI down here is going below 30, and so you can see Apple was oversold. And so that was a case where you could have made a dip buy when it's oversold and caught that bounce. But you'll also see where a stock that's oversold can get more and more oversold, right? And so you can see it continued going down after that small bounce. And then you can see where Apple was eventually overbought as well. So if we want to do overbought days, we can do DF RSI greater than 70, right? And let's print the overbought days. Just like that. And let's see some overbought days we got. So June 24th, June 9th. So you see we're way overbought there around June 9th. And if you were following the market recently, you'll remember that day there was a huge spike right here. So June 8th, June 9th right there. So you see this line here on the RSI goes way above 70. It goes all the way up to 80 actually, which is extremely overbought. So this was Apple kind of consolidating, and then it went parabolic for a bit and ran to like 350, 360-ish. And then it needed a little bit of time to consolidate before going higher. But that parabolic move right there was overbought, and then there was a big sell-off right there. So that's how you calculate overbought and oversold conditions using bta-lib. And then, you see how stocks can remain overbought for extended periods of time. And so a lot of people will combine this RSI indicator with another indicator like MACD. So we could do that. So we could do MACD equals bta-lib dot, and then type M. It looks like MACD, just like that. And then I can apply that to the same data frame, which was in DF. So the original data frame is in DF. And then if we print the MACD there, so I'll run that, right? We have the MACD object, so print.df there. And that gives us the MACD signal and histogram values there. And let's see. And then I'm going to add those to our existing data frame. So we'll say df MACD equals MACD df MACD. And then let's print df again. Let's make sure that works. And MACD. So we're adding the MACD in there. And then we'll say df signal. Let me make sure I have the right name. Signal and histogram. Okay. So signal equals MACD.df signal and df histogram. And let's just combine those together. And I'll print that out one more time. And then you see we've gotten all of our Alpaca data for the open, high, low, close data from the market data API, put it into a data frame. We ran the simple moving average, RSI, and then now we have the MACD signal and histogram. And you see this histogram line. Let's go ahead and see how this looks on the TradingView chart just to verify our program is correct. So if you go here, I have this MACD indicator. And if you've never used TradingView, I have a video on that. But you can just add an indicator, right? And then you can do MACD. And I'll add that one. And then I'll add the RSI back, relative strength. Add that. And we have both of those. And you'll see this histogram and also this this MACD and signal line. And you can see recently, if I zoom in, see that histogram there, and it goes from positive to negative right there recently. So this last 1, 2, 3, 4 bars here. So it's green and then it's red, and then you see that line, that signal line there. And so if I zoom in here, you'll see this line. So the MACD, and look right here, you'll see the value. So you see this value that goes from above 0 to below 0. And then you have two numbers, 12.46 and 12.59. And then if you look here, you'll see on, looks like right here, like 5 days ago, we have it going from positive to negative, and then we have those two numbers, 12.65, right? And 12.65-ish, and 12.62-ish. Right. Okay. And I think the decimals are slightly different here. That's because the data, so they're very close, but you also, the data sources are a little bit different because Alpaca's data source, I think, aggregates multiple exchanges, and I'm not positive where all the different data comes from for TradingView. So, but they are pretty similar. So you should be able to check all your calculations here, but they might be off by, you know, hundredths or maybe tenths of a point here and there. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this video. I think we covered a lot here. We know how to download data from the Alpaca Market Data API. We know how to download those bars over multiple time frames, including the daily or 5-minute time frame, or you can even go down to the minute or do the 15-minute time frame if you're more interested in those time frames. We know how to download or retrieve data over WebSockets. We know how to write all of that data into a CSV format that's easily digested by the BTA technical analysis library, and we can read that into a pandas data frame. And we showed a little bit with code how to manipulate these pandas data frames, apply technical analysis indicators that are built into bta-lib, and, you know, calculate whenever any of these stocks are overbought or oversold. So we could actually scan through all these text files. We can open the directory, loop through them, and then scan all the overbought and oversold conditions. And in a future video, I think what I'll do is for all those symbols, you know, look at the most recent day and see which stocks closed oversold, and also look at the MACD signal there. And then we can integrate that with any of the other videos we have to both backtest, so we could run all these signals through Backtrader to backtest strategies over historical data that comes from the Alpaca Market Data API. And then once we're satisfied with that and our backtest results, that you can see in some of the other videos I've made on Backtrader backtesting, once we're satisfied, then we could apply some other code that we have another tutorial on, which is how to actually issue the buys and sells, bracket orders, that sort of thing, and hook that in and build, you know, a full trading system. So that's it for now. That's my coverage of the Alpaca Market Data API. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned. I'm hoping to finish up the series on Binance and crypto that I didn't finish because I kind of got burnt out. I started that around Memorial Day weekend, and then all the riots happened and shelter in place had gone on too long, so I just had to take a break. So I'm hoping to pick that back up this weekend now that I have a little bit more time and in better spirits. So stay tuned for a continuation of the Binance videos as well. All right, thanks a lot for watching, and see you next time.